Hi and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave and this is episode 1127A and today's date is November 14th, 2016, and the title of the episode is The Next Couple of Years Will Be the Worst Economic Period in U.S. History. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we are getting more and more signs that this economy is ripping itself apart, and we're starting to see that stores, well, they're already not doing well during this period, and we know leading up to the holiday season, they're not going to be doing well at all. Actually, if you look at a lot of the stores today, it seems like every day's a Black Friday today, which means they're in trouble, which means they're trying to have as many sales as they possibly can to draw the people in. We can see already with Macy's, well, their net income for the third quarter fell by 87%. This is the seventh straight quarter of declines in both profits and sales. Net income for the third quarter, as we know, fell by 87% to $15 million, following a 46% decline over the same period last year. Sales dropped to 4.2%, and same-store sales, or sales at stores open at last year, fell by 3.3%. So what we're seeing right now is that Macy's, the flagship store, it is not doing well. We're going to see this with many, many other stores, and we're going to see closures like you've never seen before. Actually, if we go back to last year, after the holiday season, actually during the holiday season, we saw stores closing during that period, and afterwards, we've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stores close after the holiday season because they just cannot make it. And we can see at this point in time that the people, they're not going to be going out and purchasing like they once did. We can already see that the stores, they are pushing sales. Black Friday, Black Friday, Black Friday. That's all I'm hearing right now. And they're having Black Friday before Black Friday even arrives, which is the day after Thanksgiving. Now, when we look back over time and we look at productivity, we look at wage increases, we look at wealth distribution, we see that during the Great Prosperity from 1947 to 1979, we saw that wages, well, they went up at the same pace as productivity. And then once 1979 to 1980 hit, going forward, guess what happened? Productivity continually moved up, but wages, well, they started to separate from productivity and they started to decline. And again, going from 1970s, this is when we came off the gold standard. This is when things started to fall apart. We see right now that there's a huge gap between the wealthy 1% and everyone else. Really, at the point of 1973, right after we came off the gold standard, things started to go wrong. We see that the 1%, well, they got wealthier and wealthier, and everyone else, we can see the wages declined, wealth declined, and the gap is continually widening as time goes on. And this is all part of the central banking system, because this is what the central bankers wanted. They wanted us completely off the gold standard, no checks and balances, and they wanted to create fiat currency, and they wanted to continually do this throughout time. Now we're at the point where the printing presses, and I know there's no printing presses, but they're overheating because they're creating so much currency right now that the gap is continually widening. Now, this currency is not reaching the people, and they did this on purpose, because if the currency actually hit the people on the streets, we would see inflation. And this is why they keep saying, well, there's no inflation, there's no this, because they're holding it back. They're having the banks put it into the stock market, having the banks do other things with it. They're giving it to hedge funds, investment companies, having them purchase real estate. And this is why we see those certain areas, that's where we see inflation. The rest of the people, they're not seeing it. But one thing is for certain about everything that has been happening is that this economy that we're in right now, we've been tracking it, we've been following it, we understand it. Just like back in 2008, we had the corporate media, the federal government, hundreds of millions of people telling us that the economy was fine. And then we had few who are looking at the subprime security, betting against it. There are other few out there saying there's something wrong. We're gonna have a credit problem. We're gonna have a real estate problem. There's bubbles all over the place. But of course, the mass majority of the people in the corporate media and the government, they all thought that everything was fine. Well, I should say the central bank, the government, they knew it wasn't fine. But the corporate media and the rest of the hundreds of millions of people, they thought everything was A-OK. But other people saw that there was a problem. Now, they knew it was going to crash. They didn't know the exact date and time because they didn't know how long the U.S. government, the central banks, how long they were able to keep the system propped up with that illusion. The same thing's happening right now. We know it's going to crash. We've been looking at the New York Fed, the Dallas Fed, Chicago Fed, all flashing recession. We've been looking at corporate defaults. We're looking at delinquencies on auto loans, delinquencies on student loans. We've been looking at all of this and many other parts of the economy, and we're realizing that we are totally now in a recession, moving towards a depression. And at this point, it doesn't really matter who's president because the collapse is coming. Because the GDP, we know that's a big lie. It's used by politicians to convince you that everything is fine. They're continually telling us that we're in this incredible growth phase. And we know the last GDP number was pushed up for the election. But if you take the annual GDP minus the annual growth in federal debt, guess what? The last 8 years were abysmal. Because what we're really looking at is many of these years, especially going back to 2009, going forward, we're in the red. And we can see right now that everything they've told us is a complete lie. Now, many people they still believe that this economy is fine. Actually, U.S. Treasury Secretary Jack Lew was out there saying that Obama has fixed the economy. His 8 years in 8 years in office really changed the way the economy is today. We're back on track. Everything is fine. This, to me, sounds like a huge setup. Because as we know, we've been tracking all of this. And we know what's going to happen. Once Trump gets into office, once he starts pushing his policies, they're going to let the economy go. The illusion is going to disappear, just like they did back in 2008. But there were a couple people that knew what was going on. So we know what's been going on because we've been tracking it. Now think about this for a second. Who is the master of bankruptcies? Who knows what to do when a corporation cannot function anymore? He has to declare bankruptcy. He has to reorganize and get that company working again. Well, Donald Trump knows how to do this. What's going to happen to this country? We're going to go through a bankruptcy. And actually, we have the right person to turn this entire thing around to help with the restructuring of this dead economy. Doesn't mean that's going to be easy. Doesn't mean that people aren't going to lose jobs. It doesn't mean that we're not going to have problems where we can't get supplies. No, we're going to have all of that. But the one thing we do have right now is that we have someone in office that understands this. This is why when they keep using the phrase that, oh, he had failed businesses, he doesn't have all successful businesses. You know something? I rather have someone in office that knows how to deal with a failed, bankrupt business. Because once you know and you have experienced that, you know how to handle it. Think about a person who's only seen successes and all of a sudden something happens where everything crashes. what do? I mean, look at the millennials today with the election. They can't handle themselves today. They need to go into corners and curl up, have hot cocoa, have someone rub their belly to make them feel better at what happened. The reason there is failure is to get the experience of what might happen. Because you can take that failure and that experience and use it later on to help. And I do believe Trump is in office right now to hopefully steer us out of this major collapse that is coming. But don't be fooled that he's going to be able to stop this collapse. He's not going to be able to do this, because once he learns what the economy has been going through, what the economy is, how they kept the illusion alive, guess what? He's going to realize that this system is doomed. And he's going to make plans on how to deal with this. Now, there is going to be chaos. There's going to be people out there that cannot handle this. I mean, you're seeing it now. Think about when there's a real crisis. How are these individuals going to handle themselves? They're not going to be able to. And this is what I've been talking about for a very long time. People are not going to be able to handle what is coming. They're going to freak out. They're going to riot. They're going to break into people's homes. They're going to go crazy because they've never handled anything like this before, or anything. And they will not be able to function once this hits. But hopefully, during these last couple of years where we've been watching all this, we understand what is about to happen. We understand that we've been prepping for a reason. We understand that we are ready for what is coming. So we can be on the other side when everything starts to be, put back together. But we have to make it through this period of time. We have to keep our wealth. We have to keep our families safe. So whatever you've been doing, double your efforts right now. Prep, prep, prep. Because 2017 is going to be one crazy year. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.